And welcome to the SpartanMag.com VCast. Jim Comparoni, Paul Konyndyk. Michigan State getting ready to play Ohio State this Saturday night. Spartan Stadium. Michigan State 3-1. Ohio State Buckeyes marching in 4-0. They've not been tested yet. They've played two MAC teams and I guess three MAC teams plus Marshall, something like that. Ohio State is very good. Everybody knows that. Michigan State coming off a tough loss at Boston College. We'll be talking a little bit more about that. This week, had a chance to speak with offensive line coach Jim Mahalchik. We got some coverage over at SpartanMag.com. Check that out. Also, Aiden Chiles. Paul did a great story about Aiden Chiles yesterday and how he's coping with the disappointments so far this season, although he's really flashed a lot of talent. Go over there, become a SpartanMag.com subscriber. In the meantime, give us a like here on this channel. Subscribe to this channel. We'd really appreciate that. Konyndy's playing hurt. I caught a cold in Boston. Now I think he's got it. I feel bad replaying hurt. You're out here toughing it out, Paul. Check him out. He's doing all right. He's ready to roll. Now, Ohio State. Paul, I got this feeling that I got to watch some more Ohio State. Everybody knows they're full throttle talent. But what I want to see is Michigan State's defense has been a surprise this year, a consistent surprise. Even though they lost to Boston College, they kept Castellanos contained for the most part, kept a lid for the most part on their run game, except for one play. We'll talk about that in a moment. Pass play, one play deep late in the game. But, kept them under 300 yards, very nearly kept them under 20 points. The defense has been good. They're losing members. They're losing soldiers here and there. They've had safety injuries and so forth, and you had Malik Spencer and Angelo Gross playing hurt in the last couple of minutes, ended up costing them in the last play. But if they're healthy, I know Ohio State has blown Michigan State out big time in recent years. Michigan State has been uncompetitive through. They couldn't even get into the second quarter against these guys. I'm eager to see if Michigan State's defense is going to be able to slug and hang with that Ohio State offense and at least offer some resistance. Michigan State right now is number 6 in the Big Ten in total defense. That'll mean more after you've played the entire conference, but it's a representative, solid, functional, respectable defense. I have a feeling they're going to be able to offer some resistance to Ohio State. Am I crazy?
No, I don't think you're crazy, and it's not fake defense because Michigan State's played two decent Power 5 teams. So
Maryland's number 1 in the Big Ten in passing offense.
So you look at what Michigan State's done in relation to what other teams in the Big Ten have done. Like if you looked at Michigan State's defense last year after they played Richmond, that would be like fool's gold because of what the schedule that they played. But you look at what they've done thus far in defense, and I think it's legit. They've got a good defensive coordinator. I find it interesting in this game that they've got a defensive coordinator, Joe Rossi, who's familiar with Ohio State, but they also have guys from the Oregon State coaching staff that are familiar with what Chip Kelly does.
Yeah.
And whether that gives them an edge in some ways and helps them stay closer in this game, I don't know. The one thing that I do know is that one thing that Cal Halliday was saying today, and I think he was spot on with his point, is the thing about Ohio State is if you make a mistake, if you make any type of mistake out there, they make you pay. And I think the same thing is true of their defense against your offense. And you talk about can Michigan State as a good defense, I think Michigan State's proven they have a good defense. But can they slug with Ohio State? And to me, I would say that depends. It's not can Michigan State match up with Ohio State. It's like, can you avoid making the catastrophic mistakes that allow things to snowball, and that part of that is offense. Like Michigan State is not going to be able to do sudden change against these guys from Ohio State the way that they've been able to do sudden change against even Maryland or against Boston College. It's not going to be like that. So if you got a kickoff fumble, near the goal line, that's going to be a touchdown. You're going to have a hard time holding them out of the end zone. It's going to be tough to have goal line stands against these guys. So it's one of these deals where Michigan State, to make this game competitive, needs to play. Need to play good football in all phases of the game, and then you can kind of piece through and look at, did the defense do its part? Did the offense do their part? But I don't think you can look at anything in isolation and be like, can this defense hang with this offense? Because I think they can, but nothing happens in isolation. It's all based on what everyone else does.
I agree, and I think Michigan State has the ability to jump up and win one of these games where they're a big underdog. Maybe not against Ohio State. Oregon has gotten it together a little bit more. Michigan, maybe they'll rebound and play better. Iowa, we'll have to wait and see. Michigan State will be an underdog probably against Indiana. I don't know. But I think Michigan State's going to jump up and win. They've got the ability to jump up and win one of these games. And let's say they go out and lose this game 24-14 and show some of that mettle that, they didn't win this game, but they're going to be dangerous down the line against Iowa and Michigan. I think that's possible. And I'm kind of looking to see if they can play 4 quarters, all 15 rounds, and stand up and do those type of things. You're right about the explosiveness. In the Marshall game, and with Chip Kelly, talking to Demetrius Martin about that, and Martin has coached against Chip Kelly out on the West Coast a number of times. And I asked him, Chip Kelly had had pretty good talent at UCLA, and years ago had good talent at Oregon. Now Chip Kelly's looking forward to just being an offensive coordinator at Ohio State. That's been well documented. Doesn't have to do all the diplomatic, political stuff you have to do as a head coach.
Which he's terrible at.
He's terrible at that. But he's just chalk guy now, just offense. And Ryan Day's turned over the offense to him. And Demetrius Martin says, hey, when you're playing Chip Kelly, spend a little more time in the film room because he's going to come at you with a number of things. Chip Kelly's been good over the years. Now Chip Kelly's got Ohio State explosiveness. He's got different levels of explosives on that offense. And Judkins and Henderson at running back, and Smith, the freshman receiver, who's unbelievable, and Tate and Emeka, the wide receivers. It's Ohio State talent all over the place. So it's Chip Kelly with plus talent. Demetrius Martin agreed that that makes for a different type of shooting match, as Nick Saban used to say. Against Marshall, Ohio State had this one play where they come out and it's a quick snap. They're unbalanced. So one of the wide receivers is actually covered up and ineligible. The defense didn't really notice it. They spread them out and they run a little bubble screen. It gets out 70-yard touchdown. It's like Cal Halliday was talking about today. If you give them a little bit an inch here and there, it's track meet. You're losing those track meets. Michigan State has known that in recent years.
Yeah, and I think one of the things you look at, with the Joe Rossi type of thing is one of the things he does a really good job of is changing up the game plan from week to week. Blue Adams didn't have a ton to say today, but he was talking. I asked him how he likes being in that scheme, and he was like, Rossi does a good job every week of giving the defense new things to do, and kind of giving you the challenge as an assistant coach of how are you going to implement what he wants on a week-to-week basis. But he does that in a way that he wants his guys to still play simple and fast, and I think that's kind of like we've talked about this a little bit throughout the year. It's one thing to give football players a complex scheme that might work on the chalkboard. It's another thing to give them stuff that they can execute, and so I'm interested to see what they do, for Ohio State. And I asked Jordan Hall about the adding different layers, and he said that the way it's added is you really don't notice that new things are being added. It's new things are being added, but the way it's presented, it's a kind of a new spin on what we did against this team, or it's just a subtle difference about what we did on this team. So it's like there's a lot of new stuff being added each week, but it's presented in a way that's easily digestible from the player standpoint, and when you have that frame of reference, it's easier to execute. You can get a lot more installed in maybe one day than you're used to. So I think Joe Rossi's kind of an interesting cat in that, he's got some of the, deep playbook thing that can sometimes be an undoing of a lot of defensive coordinators. Yeah. But he also understands the communication piece, which has definitely always been the undoing of deep playbook guys.
Yeah.
They have a higher IQ than everyone else. But Joe Rossi understands the importance of communication. And, so I think changing the pictures, giving someone a little bit something more complex, but also there's the self-confidence that these guys have gained from 3 weeks. Ohio State hasn't played anybody. I get that. Michigan State has. So Ohio State has a lot more talent. But we've seen in games like this in the past where one team has been tested, the other one hasn't. Where they can hang for a little bit. Cal Halliday referenced the 2022 game where he thought Michigan State was hanging for Ohio State for a little bit. Chuck Brantley had that pick six early in that. I think they went up 7-0 in the first quarter with like a 37-yard pick six in that game, and the defense was doing pretty well up until around halftime, and then things kind of fell apart. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a similar type of game, unfold. I think Michigan State will be, they'll be up to the task early. But they're going to have to keep on making adjustments, and they're going to have to keep on playing hard, and the offense is going to have to take advantage of red zone opportunities. If they don't, then this is going to be a snowball type game. I don't think Michigan State's defense can't do it alone.
Right. Hey, Paul, just a few years ago, the state of Michigan ranked first in the nation for deposit container recycling. 90% of all purchased bottles and cans were being redeemed for their deposits. Today, only 73% are being redeemed. That means Michiganders are forfeiting $105 million every year in bottle and can deposits that are not being redeemed. This deficit is having a negative impact on our environment. When Michigan's recycling rate drops, it hurts the environment, it hurts industry, and it hurts all of us. Healthy environment the state. Help yourself. Take them back. Take those bottles and cans back. They're your lakes, your roads, and your beaches, and it's your dime. So take them back. It's worth your time, and everyone will benefit. Take them back. A message from Shoepan, a great Michigan company dedicated to recycling and dedicated to the Michigan State Spartans. Now, Michigan State's defense, we've already talked a little bit about that. With Jordan Hall making a big play there in fourth down, Michigan State showing some resilience, showing some toughness to withstand a goal line situation. Had 2 or 3 goal line situations there against Boston College. I think that their confidence is pretty good. The question that I'm starting to have is Malik Spencer. He limped off a little bit in the last 2 minutes of that game, came back. Michigan State, they don't have much in terms of second-string safeties because they've had some injuries there. I thought the loss of Dylan Tatum was felt more in that Boston College game than any game all year. I think they hold on and win that game if Tatum's on the field, because some things happened with Boston College's go-ahead touchdown drive where Malik Spencer got hurt, went off the field. Angelo Gross was hurt, went off the field. And the play that got that drive going, Avion Gross is in the slot area. Armorion Smith is on the field. And, they finished the FAU game that way with Angelo Gross and Avion Gross on the field. And Angelo was helping his younger brother to get right and everything. Well, Angelo's off the field. Avion's on his own. Communication might not have been as good when you're getting to that second string. Really, it's third and fourth string guys in some ways. And they gave up a play there. Then there was like a TV timeout or something. And I was talking to Demetrius Martin about that a little bit. I was like, when you're on the sideline and the guys had just gone off the field, they're going to say they're okay, but do you have to kind of like judge whether they're actually okay or not? And he says, yes, that is part of it. And they all say they're okay, so you put them out there. And Angelo Gross, slipped and fell. It's a rainy situation, gives up the post. Leverage maybe wasn't quite right to the safety, but Malik also didn't come over and make the tackle. He's not 100%. Both those guys were off with temporary injuries just moments earlier. You get Dylan Tatum out there, I think everything's. I think a lot of things are different. Credit to Boston College for making that play, but I'm worried about Michigan State getting dinged up a little bit already at this point in the season. Everybody knows about the injuries, but the Michigan State's defense at their best, I'd like to see them against this Ohio State team. Ohio State probably would like to get a challenge as well, see where they sit. I think that part of this football game is going to be pretty good. And Jordan Hall, you got to feel good for him. He came out and spoke today. What did you gather from what he had to say?
Jordan Hall said that play, that fourth down stoppage, that goal line stand was it wasn't exactly like what they'd seen from Castellanos on film, but they knew in some of the short yardage running situations like that there's probably a good chance that he was going to be carrying the ball. And, Jordan Hall said that basically on that one he read his keys right, and he got a good jump, and he was able to stone Castellanos in the backfield, and that was a huge play. But I think don't discount, despite the outcome, the consistent sudden change, like rising up type of things, like the confidence building, like goal line stands build a ton of confidence, and and they had multiple ones in that game. But to your point earlier, like you just wonder about the secondary depth, because these athletes are so good. You got to have horses that can run, and like a defensive back at 85% is not much of anything out
right
there. So like if Michigan State does like get burned big time in a track meet type situation, people are going to be like, oh, but, look at Ohio State's talent. But I think Michigan State has some pretty good talent in the defensive backfield. The problem is they don't have pretty good depth, and there's a big difference between finishing the game, like with Avion Gross in the field against FAU, a quarterback that isn't going to throw the football, that's just going to pretty much primarily run, and a guy like Castellanos, who's like one of the efficiency leaders in the country, and so it's going to be interesting. Again, also though, like Ohio State, they got to be going in this game like wondering, like how are these guys going to perform, because they have not been tested, and this is an extremely soft schedule. So it's an interesting situation. I don't know, like if you're Michigan State, it's a tough game, but if you're Ohio State, this is your first big game, and you're sitting around in the hotel room all day waiting to get out on the field in a night game.
They'll be excited. They'll be ramped up.
They will. But sometimes you get too excited too early, and things like there's that issue with night games. I would hate if I was a player sitting around in a hotel waiting all day, to get going. But Michigan State's got to be ready for it. And I think we talk a lot about defense, but I really think this is a game where the offense has to take a step forward. You have to have some sort of threat of a running game. You can't miss open receivers, and those are all things that we don't know what's going to happen. I trust that Chiles is going to be pretty good, but this is the best defensive line that Michigan State has played.
Yes.
They've got Ohio State has athletes on some of those plays where Michigan State has had wide open receivers.
Yeah.
Ohio State's got the athletes to make you pay if you don't make their accurate throw on that. They have recovery speed, and that's something that I don't think Maryland had. I don't think Boston College necessarily had the recovery speed and the type of athleticism. So you got to not only make the right read if you're a quarterback, you got to make the right read and the correct throw for the situation. Because if you're off by a foot or two, that's going to be PBU, at best, and pick six at worst. And I think Aiden Chiles can take a big step forward in this game, but it might not necessarily show in the statistics.
Right.
And that's where I think people need to give him a break this week, because this is not an easy task that they're facing, and this is, he made some mistakes last weekend, correct. I get that. And I was critical of him in doing some things that I thought were dumb, and I still think that. But this is a different type of test for him, and it's not going to be easy. And this is definitely a growing opportunity.
I don't like that word dumb.
I know you don't, but
it's overzealous, not proper discretion, those type of things. But he thought that he could give that guy a chance to make that play on 1st and 10. But
no, you know what? It doesn't change. I feel bad that he was tearful afterwards. But it doesn't change. He hurt his team with a decision that shouldn't be made. It wasn't overzealous. It was something that should have never happened, and there's no justification for something like that. I'm okay if it's a jump ball situation where you have to have a jump ball situation, but you've got to have some sort of governor. You can be the most aggressive quarterback in the world, but you still have to play with discretion, and that's something that he cannot do moving forward. I hope he learns from it. I think he's a young quarterback. You got to expect. I expect mistakes. I expect overthrows. I expect missing receivers or not adjusting plays at the line of scrimmage correctly. But I can, if I'm a Michigan State coach, I expect him not to make plays like he made on that 1st and 10 throw. That's something that has to be erased, and it's unacceptable.
I'll be curious to see. Michigan State's had open receivers all year against lesser opponents. A lot of times, it's play action and and maximum protection with only 2 receivers out, and one of them's getting open a lot. Montori Foster's been open all year. And think about Montori Foster last year. He had 44 catches. I don't remember him being that open last year. It was a common criticism that Michigan State's receivers were not getting separation last year. To juxtapose that against this year when Montori Foster is open all the time, that speaks to the play design, the offense, and how the offense has been successful getting a defense leaning one way and opening things up the other way, and the route progression on all those things. It's all working. Now, against this team, I'll be interested to see if there's open receivers or not. It's an ultimate test. Ohio State, one of the top 5 defenses in the country last year. They returned 9 starters, I think it is. Plus, they had the safety from Alabama who led Alabama in tackles last year, the first true freshman to ever do it. So basically, I have 10 returning starters coming back, and aside from the Alabama guy, everybody's a senior, maybe 3 or 4 juniors. That's what Mahalchik, the offensive line coach for Michigan State, was talking about yesterday, saying you can't believe how old these guys are and just how wise they are. And he was watching film, and some team would run a real nice screenplay, and the defensive lineman would put on the brakes, and they'd recognize the screen right away. And he's like, how did that guy know?
They felt it.
Yeah, because not only are they 5-star athletes and future NFL guys, Sawyer and JT, they could have went to the NFL. They came back, the defensive ends. I'm sure they're making nice NIL money, but they want to win a championship with Ohio State and all those things. You have NFL guys on the defense. I'm not talking next year NFL. They are current NFL caliber players on that defense, and they play with a lot of wisdom. So this defense, although they were not great last week in the first half against Marshall, but I'm eager to see if Michigan State can continue to spring receivers open. And Michigan State, they started 2 redshirt freshmen at wide receiver last year, first career starts, and they didn't get targeted a whole lot. So it's going to be easier for them, the opponent, to keep an eye on Montori Foster. If Marsh is not out there, we don't know what that's going to look like. So a lot of questions there, but a difficult task for Michigan State against this defense.
It comes down to, can they run the football and avoid those, like we talked about it. I said last week, on multiple occasions, that it's not the 2 and 3 yard runs that's the problem for Michigan State. It's the negative runs. And Mahalchik, pretty much said the same thing yesterday when we talked to him, and that's going to be a whole lot more difficult against the veteran defensive line because, and you've got a young quarterback. You've got to be able to change where a running play is going to hit. You got to be able to look across the line of scrimmage pre-snap and say, hey, listen, this is the right play, but not to the right spot. We got to switch sides of the line or something like that. And that's something that I'm not confident that Chiles can do. But I'm also, I'm not confident that Michigan State. I know they're making progress in the run game, but you can make progress in the run game and look decent at times against a Boston College or Maryland, and not look good at all against Ohio State. Then again, Ohio State really hasn't faced a team that has a running game like Michigan State. That's the bread and butter of what they do on offense, and I think Michigan State is getting better in that regard. So, but you got to be able to avoid the extreme negative run plays, the catastrophic mistakes. But you cannot get behind schedule on these guys. Michigan State's not going to convert a whole bunch of 3rd and 10s. You get 3rd and 10s or 3rd and 13s, 3rd and 15, it ain't going to happen. You might get lucky once in a while, but they're going to make you pay more often than not. So that's going to be the challenge for me. It's like, okay, I think Aiden Chiles is going to be a better version of himself this week than he was last week. But to me, it's can the run game take another step, and can they avoid some of those catastrophic mistakes? And can a guy like Nate Carter, who's pretty good who's really good actually when things are blocked up well, of doing a nice job. But can he run through the wash? Can he get some of those tough yards? And can Michigan State do a better job on some of those scramble plays? You think of the scramble at Chiles and the little pass to Carter that he didn't get. He didn't look into his hands last week.
If he catches that, they win the game.
Those are like backyard plays that you need in games like this. And teams that have played together for a while, guys that have played together for a while, I think like Kirk Cousins and B.J. Cunningham, like Peyton Thorne and Jaden Reed. Those you can make those backyard plays. Now, we got to see if guys like Nate Carter can make some of those backyard plays with Aiden Chiles, because things aren't going to be perfect in this game, and they're going to have to make big plays when things break down, because things are going to break down this week.
Yeah, and guys were open. Like Nate Carter drops a touchdown pass against Prairie View or maybe Maryland or somebody, I can't remember. Excellent catch, and the guy strips it, and it's out. Otherwise, Chiles' numbers could look a lot different. Yeah. Chiles has missed some open guys. The schematics have gotten guys open. Yeah. Now, the Nate Carter thing was an impromptu thing, freelance situation. And interestingly, Keith Boniface, Michigan State's running back coach, said that yesterday in practice they took a little period and he worked on throwing Nate Carter just some off-schedule passes, some hard ones, some floated some like on that to simulate the type of freelance play that he dropped on that play, because everything else is usually very systematic. So they actually worked that into the practice yesterday. Might not ever come up again, but sometimes when there's a mistake in a game, that's what you work on the next day.
It's a confidence builder, though, too.
Yeah.
So if you work on that and you do good at it, it's a confidence builder for your quarterback, knowing that, hey, I can still go back to this guy, and I think he will. It's also a confidence builder for Nate Carter, because he strikes me as the kind of guy that he does his best by working hard and repping over and over and over and over again. And there's some guys like that.
If you rehearse something and you do it, there's a better chance you'll get it right when the game comes.
But some people need it more than others.
Yeah, and that's not something that you work on necessarily. You only have so many minutes in a practice during an entire preseason camp and a practice week to work on something. And that one, boy, that would have been a big one if Carter holds onto that one. Now, the play that got out for the long touchdown run, Michigan State, Chiles throws an interception early in the second half on a slant, throws it behind Velling. Interception, come back from TV timeout. They run, about 36, 38 yards for a touchdown, whatever it was. On that play, looking at it again and talking to some people, at the VCast, I hadn't had a chance to see it, and there was a collision there between Halliday and Malik Spencer. This is a case, they're running a sweep to the short side. They got a pull center and a pull front side guard. So Halliday's over there. He takes on one of the pulling linemen, and Bogle's doing a pretty good job against the left tackle or tight end. Halliday's taking on the puller over there, and they're doing a decent job leveraging it, setting the edge, and just bottling up a little bit so that help can come over across, scrape, and make the tackle. Halliday, everybody loves him. He's been working hard his whole career. He's done a lot of great things, a lot of contributions. Team-oriented guy all the way. He's taken on the block, and he disengages from the block to go turn and help, and it ends up cuts the other way, and he goes and runs right into Malik Spencer. He ends up throwing a block on Malik Spencer. And I didn't get a chance to ask Halliday about it, but I've talked to some other people. It's a consummate situation where do your job and don't try to do someone else's job. And Cal Halliday, he's a guy that'll sacrifice for this program. We know that, and I'm sure he'd like to have that play back. He'd taken on the block and done it well enough to disengage, and he's trying to be a 12th man on the field instead of relying on Malik being over there. Ends up getting his own man's way, gets out and it's sad for the team because Michigan State has been so good at playing team defense and not having those type of errors. And that one right there was one of 2 or 3 plays that cost them the victory. Now, maybe they go down and score a touchdown anyway. I don't know, but you want them to do it where they're beating you right-handed and you're not helping them. Rossi is continuing to implement his defense, and that's something that's a teaching moment. And they will get better as a team going forward with that as a lesson. But it's unfortunate that play got out in that manner. And then the other one, when the 2 guys were hurt at the end, that one gets out as well. But if you're making your plays on offense, then it's not that big a deal. Talking about the running game, I thought one of the bigger problems for Michigan State in that game, and one of the bigger disappointments was the run game for Michigan State, averaging only 3.8 yards per carry in that game. They didn't have like that 30-yarder, which can help your average quite a bit. Didn't have that against a Boston College run defense, which is okay but not great. So the run offense, I thought was a disappointment last week. They need to be better than that. They know that. They're working on it. This won't be a type of opposition where you can put up. You're not going to rush for 175 against these guys. But that part needs to get back on track, which is hard to do when they've started 4 different offensive lines in the first 4 games. We'll wrap it up, Paul. Anything else?
One last thing I'd say this is Blue Adams. One of the things he said is we don't need guys wearing capes. So to your point about like doing your job, and that's one of the things I think the guys have done a pretty good job at. People playing their job, eliminating on the freelancing stuff, and that's just
their strength on defense.
And that's something like D'Antonio used to always preach, do your 111.
Yes.
And that's something that we're hearing a lot more this year, the 111 stuff again.
And they've been doing it.
And they have been doing it. And sometimes it doesn't always work. Sometimes under the microscope, like the Cal Halliday play, but you look at about 5, 6, 7 plays on offense, or maybe if they've gone a different way, then that wouldn't be a deal. I still think Michigan State, that was their best defensive performance of the year. Under the circumstances, given that they've got an offensive line that's got its pros on there, they've got a quarterback, who's one of the best, most efficient, one of the most dangerous guys in college football, and they're playing against a guy, Bill O'Brien, has got a good scheme.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a solid scheme. That's hard physical to stop, and so I think Michigan State's played really good football the first 4 weeks. Is that good enough to hang with Ohio State for 2 quarters? I don't know. It depends on if they can eliminate some of these big plays. I think secondary depth's a huge deal. I do think they probably get it. There's a good chance they'll get a little bit more help in receiving room this week. I don't know, but it'd be interesting to see if tight ends can continue to take a step, because I thought Jack Belling, he played really good last week. I think if he can add to that, they need to be able to consistently ride Jack Belling in some of those zone schemes, where he can sit down against his zone. He's so good against like zone defense of finding that seam, sitting down. He's got great hands. So that's something I'd like to see Michigan State try to do. I think Michigan State's going to be fine against some of these physical teams. I think they match up better with like a Michigan, provided they stay healthy. I think they match up better with an Iowa. I know Iowa's got a new defensive coordinator or whatever, and they beat Minnesota last week.
Offensive coordinator.
All right, sorry. Offensive coordinator. I know they beat
31-14
Minnesota.
something.
But that 31-14, I'm not so sure about that, because Minnesota lost to North Carolina, a team that just gave up 70 points.
Yeah.
So we're talking about
I guess Iowa only threw for like 90 yards in that game.
So it's still kind of early about Minnesota doesn't have necessarily the run game that they've had in the past, because they've had some injuries. So it's still kind of too early to make judgment calls about some of these teams, but I worry about Michigan State against the more explosive skill player teams, and I think Oregon will have some, and I think and I also think obviously Ohio State's going to have some, but I think Michigan State's got a good defense. I think they've got an offense that's developing with some good talent if they can get a couple guys back, and I think it's all about making incremental gains. And we didn't come into the season thinking Michigan State was going to be a 9 or 10 win team. You just want to see them working hard, fighting their tails off every week and making progress, and then beating teams or competing with teams and having a chance to win games against opponents in their own weight class. And that's not going to be easy coming after this 4-game gauntlet they're in. But we'll see how they come out of it for games against like Indiana, and whomever else they have on their schedule, because those games aren't going to be easy. But I think Michigan State is making progress. Whether that shows on the field this week or not remains to be seen.
They've been respectable. They've been
resilient,
respectable, competitive, and they've played 2 swing games, and they're 500 in your swing games. And usually I go into a season thinking, all right, these are the swing games. You're probably going to win half and lose half.
And they're both on the road.
Yeah. So swing games down the road. Illinois was now in the top 20. Is that a swing game? Indiana is like better.
But see, I think Illinois is a team that they'll match up well against because they can play that physical style.
As long as they stay
healthy, right?
And then Rutgers is having their best season in 15 years. Swing game probably not. That's a good team. So it's tough down the road.
Rutgers and Illinois are in the same league class.
Well, we'll see. I think Michigan State. There's a chance they're going to play some respectable competitive football this weekend. These guys think they're athletes. They're confident. They think they can compete every down, and they're planning to shock the world. So it's happened before. We'll see what happens. Got to take a lot of steps in a lot of areas, and you need some help. Ohio State last week against Marshall. Marshall went for almost 200 yards in the first half. But Marshall is air raid spread it out, not Michigan State style. A little different type of thing. Ohio State fumbled a punt inside their 10-yard line. Marshall recovered. Flag, illegal, not enough men on the line of scrimmage. They have to punt again. Ohio State retains possession. It's 21-14 at halftime. Otherwise, it could have, I think, 28-14 at halftime. If that punt stands, it might be 28-21 at halftime. Marshall could have scored 21 in the first half against Ohio State last week. But that's Marshall, a different style of offense, and they got a good quarterback, too. Yeah, are there any news coming in? We're good? So we'll wrap it up. Anything else, Paul? I appreciate it, Paul. For Paul Konyndyk, my name is Jim Comparoni from the Perlis Plaza in East Lansing, Michigan with the Spartans. You've been watching the VCast on SpartanMag.com.